Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Corey Pierce, and I'm Marketing Director here at Churn Zero, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar titled, How to Keep the Revenue Your Company Works So Hard to Earn. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you that we are recording this session. A link to the recording will be available 24 hours after this webinar. Throughout the presentation, you're welcome to submit your questions via the question and answer box, and our staff will answer them as we go. We will also address as many questions as we can during the Q&A portion of the webinar. Now, I'm pleased to introduce to you our presenter today, Kia Poom. A frontiers woman in the SaaS customer success industry, Kia has extensive experience building world-class practices that accelerate business growth. Prior to founding Desired Path, Kia held chief positions at Oracle, Eloqua, Adobe, Intelligent Technologies, and Blueprint Software Systems. Based on over 24 years of experience, Kia developed the Intelligent Framework to provide clients with a disciplined, sustainable, and scalable approach to increasing customer value and long-term loyalty. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Kia.
Great. Thank you, Corey, and welcome to all the participants. I'm really excited to be speaking about this topic because I'm so passionate about it. I am suffering from a little bit of a cold, and so if I need to cough every once in a while, I will do so, but I'm already here with my tea. So let's just jump into it. Companies work hard to attract and win customers, and they spend a lot of time and money ensuring that the sales discipline is effectively bringing in revenue. Yet the amount of focus on acquiring new business is disproportionate to the monitoring and retaining and expanding of the existing customer revenue. And what that means is that after the dotted line has been signed, all of sales and marketing's efforts are for naught if the revenue is going out the door just as quickly as it came in. And so creating an equally performant post-sales organization and a mature revenue management practice is really crucial for companies and where they should be focusing a lot of energy on. And so today we're going to look at how do companies work to keep customers and the revenue that they work so hard to earn in the first place. As Corey mentioned, my name is Kia Poom, and she's already nicely summarized my background. What I'll just say in extension to that is that I can summarize my 24-year career into two aha moments. One is that thinking from the customer perspective is the best way to align an organization internally, and using the customer's journey as the desired path to success is the most effective way to drive growth in a proactive, repeatable, and scalable manner. And so we're going to be taking a look at that. I am the founder and CEO of Desired Path, a CX solution that helps companies become customer-centric to drive smarter and faster revenue growth. So today we'll take a look at what the changing landscape of business is doing and why are customer-centric organizations therefore critical for success. We'll take a look at how an intelligent framework helps you achieve faster and smarter revenue growth by continuously aligning to the patterns of your most successful customers. And then we'll finally look at discovering industry-first metrics that you can actually use to measure the customer progress and revenue through the true holistic customer funnel. So it's no denying that today we're living in a world where customers demand great experiences. We're living in an experience economy. Companies like Amazon, Netflix, and Uber have conditioned and empowered today's customers in both their personal and their professional lives. We are subscribing to services to save time and money for product variety and to gain exclusive access. More than 40% of all brands sell direct to consumer today. And over the last 6 years, subscription businesses in the US grew 5 times faster than S&P 500 company revenues. We're also empowered in our professional lives. We're taking our expectations in the B2C world over into our business world as well. We now have more ability and influence to access and purchase software for our businesses. And SaaS is now the norm. It's predicted that in 2020, 41% of workloads will be run in the public cloud. And so as a result, customer needs are constantly changing and their expectations are increasing. We are becoming more and more demanding as we keep having an increase of these experiences. And so to meet the needs and expectations of today's customers, organizations must continually understand their customers or they face failure. I mean, these are the realities of what's required to keep and grow your customer business. And it's actually put significant pressure on today's businesses as well. And those who are able to adjust and rise to this new reality, those who can understand customers, deliver on increasing expectations, and operationalize their business through their customers' point of view, are growing and thriving. Companies like Apptio have doubled their revenue with a customer-centric discipline, which also helped them to IPO. A notable thing that they did in their transformation to a customer-centric company was to identify and use their customers' key moments of truth to create an engagement model that was customer-centric and scalable. So by understanding what moments in the customer's journey were most critical for success, Apptio could create a proactive engagement model that would ensure that those critical moments went off without a hitch for the customer. And this resulted in a much more seamless experience, which led to better adoption and thus expansion and better management of the customer throughout the process. Insight Squared saw a 54% increase in quarterly NPS, a 38% decrease in gross churn, and a 68% increase in their monthly renewal rate from their customer-focused strategies. And a notable thing that they did was to identify the patterns of their most successful customers. Interestingly, Insight Squared realized as part of their ongoing journey to this customer-centric approach that in the beginning, they could outline all the problems customers are having with adoption, but they couldn't identify a single successful customer. And it wasn't because they didn't have any, they absolutely were doing a lot of things right. But it was because they were so focused on correcting issues and looking to correct issues that they didn't pause to recognize what the patterns of success were. And so when they mapped out the journey based on their most successful customers, they could actually codify those behaviors and activities into an engagement model for use to help drive repeatable success across the entire customer base. And over a period of 12 months, Eloqua, prior to the Oracle acquisition, expanded customer revenue from $60 to $90 million as a result of their transformation to a customer-centric organization. And a notable thing that they did was, by all accounts, in a textbook approach, they had started out and approached the transformation in a textbook fashion. Journey maps, segmentation models, account coverage models, role clarity, compensation plans, everything was outlined very carefully and was then rolled out. But the thing was that the entire business model was predicated on the customer journey from the perspective of how Eloqua envisioned and wanted them to use the product and the features and functions. And so therefore there was this misalignment to the greater customer context of why they bought and how they operationalized and realized the value internally within their environments and what they wanted to do. And so after realizing this, the map of the journey was done again from the customer's perspective, taking into consideration their desired outcomes, and then operations in the model was realigned accordingly to support that journey. And this better alignment produced better results for both the customer, but also for Eloqua in supporting the customer more effectively. But those who haven't been able to adapt are getting left behind. In a recent study, Forrester reported that customer-centric leaders grow revenue 14% faster than laggards. And Harvard Business Review found that customer-centric leaders are 25% more profitable than companies who haven't invested in customer experience. And through our own experience, we've seen laggards spend over 100 times more in operational effort to retain customers. When the understanding of what it takes to make customers successful is not completely understood, it takes a lot more effort and throwing out a wider net of an operational model to make sure that customers are successful. So there's a lot of compelling results to prove why customer centricity is key. Unfortunately, the majority of businesses today are still not customer centric. Less than 20% of companies admit that they're truly efficient with customer journey mapping and customer management. And so we see that businesses that succeed in this new reality, those who can accelerate and maximize their customer revenue opportunity, are the ones that invest in and operate in the following set of principles and a mindset. First, their business aligns with their customer's point of view. Secondly, they're streamlining operations to enable their teams to better spend their time as strategic partners with their customers. And thirdly, data informs a constant effort to optimize and improve customer-focused practices. In other words, they're driving revenue by creating a customer-centric framework that is holistic, intelligent, and results-driven. And so we believe that a customer-centric discipline and operation is the single most important investment for today's businesses. Okay, so if being customer-centric is so critical for revenue growth, why isn't everyone doing it already? Well, to be truly customer-centric is challenging because customers are always changing and evolving, and it's really difficult to make sure that you keep evolving and adapting to that pace. And that means that businesses need to change with them if they're going to do that successfully, and continually learn and observe from these customers and then adapt their business model. And so it requires businesses to be organizationally agile, something that they've never been before, this ability to adapt and evolve. And so businesses today lack an overall understanding of their customers and an operational framework to evolve at the pace their customers are changing and deliver on those increasing expectations. Instead, companies typically run according to their internally defined viewpoint, neglecting to consider the customer's perspective. And so by forcing customers to conform to its static procedures, companies are effectively producing poor customer experiences that are disconnected to customer expectations. So how do companies turn customers into bigger customers? So Desired Path, we've built our intelligent framework to address this challenge and gap, and it's predicated on this notion of a customer desire path. In architecture, a desire path is a term for human footfall traffic. And what's interesting about desire paths is that they usually represent the fastest, easiest, or most enjoyable routes. And so architects and land planners are using desire paths to inform their design. And there's certain campuses on colleges in the United States or parks in Scandinavia where they're waiting to see where people walk first before they lay pavement down, for instance. And so this idea to use a human-centric design to create a model and a path that is most natural for people to follow because they already intrinsically follow it is a really powerful concept. And so in business, the analogous desire path is the customer journey. So if a company understands and supports a path the customers naturally take in using the product, not the one its own organization outlines to its customers, the resulting customer journey will be the most effective one at driving customer adoption, loyalty, and expanded product use. That means we're trying to get into the minds and environments of customers to see how we can slipstream the product into their environment so that they can leverage the technology technology to achieve their business outcomes, as opposed to focusing on product usage and how-tos and trying to force fit it in there and doing it in a way that's unnatural for them just because it fits our static operations and processes that we have defined. So advanced companies are actually starting to use this same human-centric design principles when creating a customer-centric business model. So we're going to take a look at how we can do that and then how we can measure the success. So in our intelligent framework, what we do is we've worked with clients to, first of all, understand what that customer desire path is, recognizing what the patterns of your most successful customers are, and then using that information to inform what plays should be executed correspondingly at each stage of the journey at the relevant time throughout the customer's desire path, so that we're supporting them in a way that's most natural to them. So here in the model, the journey outlines the path the customers will take with an organization as a result of their desire path. And then the corresponding plays and the role responsibilities and then the metrics can be completely aligned to that journey to support that. So when you know what your customer's desire path looks like, you know what those patterns of success are, you know what behaviors and activities they are exhibiting or conducting, and you know what supporting activities your organization needs to do to support them as well. Now you start to have the understanding of a repeatable playbook, but you also know, based on those supporting activities, what are the required skill sets and roles that are necessary in order to support that journey. And so you can start to lay out a playbook with clear role delineation and responsibilities that then can make sure that there are seamless handoffs and you're able to execute and support the customer with the relevant information and allow them to progress in their desire path in a natural way and giving the information that they need at that time, versus what we can do too often as vendors is try to jam in all the product information and education and knowledge up front during implementation and then hope that they've understood that and then can figure out how to operationalize that in the context of their own business. So once the playbook have been identified with those corresponding activities and we know what's required to effectively support customers, then we also know what those responsible roles within the organization are to determine how to best support those activities. And then we've got the metrics. The metrics that best represent the customer's progress as they move through the journey can then also be defined. And we're going to look at that momentarily at some examples of how that can be done. And what that effectively does is it starts to create the fill out that post-sales customer funnel that has never to this date been used to measure progress of customers through a funnel as it has been and used in the marketing and sales approach. So now with metrics, we can, in other words, measure that progress of the funnel. So we'll take a look at that momentarily. So now you've got this framework that is completely aligned around that customer. You know everything that they need to do. You're able to create a repeatable, prescriptive and proactive engagement model with clear role delineation and metrics to measure it. So once you have the operational model, let's take a look at how can you look at the very specific metrics for your organization. And so I'm taking a snapshot here of very specifically the post-sales, because the sales and marketing funnels are pretty well defined, typically within organizations. But if we look now at once the contract has been signed, we've got two examples here. These are actually real life examples of customers, and we'll call them Company A and Company B. So when we look at the onboard and launch phase of a journey, the adoption phase or usage phase, then when they are realizing value and seeing their outcomes, and then the expansion phase or them wanting more, we take a look at the 4 conversion metrics of use case, usage, outcomes, and then dollars and or equivalent representation, depending on how your organization wants to measure expansion. So in example A, they sell billing software. And so its use case to denote successful onboarding, they determine that if their customers complete 1 billing cycle in production, that means they absolutely have been onboarded and launched. They couldn't have completed in production 1 billing cycle without having finished that part of the journey. In the usage cycle, they've outlined that 3 billing cycles would indicate a healthy usage at the start, and that their customers will then start to be able to see an outcome of a reduction in account receivables, which is how this customer in particular, company A, is going to prove the outcomes that they're achieving to the customer to demonstrate value. And then when they do, their customers are typically ready to purchase the next module. And so they're looking at the number of modules purchased as the metric to see when those customers are in that stage of the journey. The second example of customer B, they have a platform that allows car dealers to upload photos of used vehicles. And so their use case to indicate successful onboarding is photos uploaded to the system. So a customer could not upload any photos to their system if they hadn't properly deployed the technology and gotten trained up and onboarded and gotten started. So that was how they're measuring their first phase of the journey. And then when no other upload channels are used, company B's customers are sticky and ready to advocate via referrals and testimonials. So in their usage stage, they indicated that no other upload channels used. They are now completely transferred over into this system. And that means that they've achieved a full set of adoption for the initial usage stage. They identified that 5 referrals and customer testimonials would be a good proxy for indicating that those customers are advocating on their behalf, therefore they are realizing value, and felt that that would then be a measure of them realizing value in that stage, and that they would then be ready to go into an expansion phase. And company B then looked at net dollar renewal, a combination of net dollar renewal, NPS, uploaded usage, and risk metrics as an indice to measure that they were in the expansion phase. And so once a company understands and codifies their specific customer desire path, the metrics that are most relevant in the use case, and then the usage, and then the outcomes that are to be delivered, those can then be determined and then used to measure how customers are converting through the stages of the funnel. And so with the intelligent framework, revenue management is actually extended for the first time across the entire customer lifecycle for proactive customer measurement and forecasting. So let's take a look then at how you can then use, through continuous observation of the customer, how you can continue to align to their desire path. And then how do you use that feedback to proactively adjust business operations to meet those continually evolving needs of the customer. And so this is where this desired path index proves really informative. So once you have the customer funnel defined, you now know the way that your customers are moving through the customer journey of service or product adoption. And so analogous to the sales and marketing funnel, which measures the velocity and cadence of prospects moving through the customer journey, or moving through the buyer journey, the customer funnel measures the velocity and cadence of customers moving through the customer journey post-sales. So it acts as a mechanism for organizations to monitor and measure the progress of healthy relationships, and as a tool to proactively signal when customers are not tracking to expected progress, and identifying risk and preventing customer churn way more proactively. So we talked about earlier in the intelligent framework, the model where the plays are completely aligned to the customer desire path. Well, when you know the effort that is required in assisting the customer through the journey, you can start to calculate the customer service cost. What is the effort required to move customers through their journey? And so this customer service cost that is simply calculated by multiplying the time that the resources spend running the plays and the company's hourly resource rate. This can now be compared against the desired path benchmark. So the desired path benchmark, the one where the playbook, the ideal playbook with the plays are measured, and you've got a time against that, you now then can see what is the actual effort that you're using against customers through the journey. And comparing against the benchmark will then tell you whether you're spending more effort than you should be or less effort than you had anticipated and planned out, or just the right amount of effort. And so where this becomes really interesting is that customers exceeding expected progress through the customer funnel are superstars. And this signal allows organizations to learn from their customer success and imply improvements back to the intelligent framework to further codify the customer journey. So these improvements will then be able to be applied to all customers in the future, ensuring that you're bringing that level of adoption, repeatability, and ongoing expansion to the entire customer base, not just your superstar customers. You're elevating that by continually improving that discipline by bringing in that closed loop feedback. Customers that are lagging in expected progress to their customer funnel are laggards, and it indicates that they're requiring additional assistance. So this signals to businesses that they should proactively reach out well in advance of the customer being unhealthy or at risk to get them back on track, onto their desired path, and avoid problems before they even occur. So this is analogous to your annual checkup at the doctor. In comparison to customer being sick, I look at customer health as the customer's already ill if they're red or yellow. You of course need that indicator, and a patient would go to a doctor and get a get well plan and get healthy again. But the most a doctor can do is get them healthy. They can't go back in time and prevent, the illness from having occurred in the first place. With the desired path index, if you're starting to see laggards, that doesn't mean it's like your annual checkup. Something might be found. It's not necessarily meaning that you're ill or you're going to be ill, but maybe there's some things that you're going to do just to make sure you get back on track, maybe sleep better, eat better, healthier, do a little bit more exercise to make sure that you don't run into any sort of health risk issues later on. Same analogy here. And then if all customers are bottlenecking at one point of the journey, this becomes really interesting for the vendor themselves. It means it's indicating that there's some friction along the desire path that customers are collectively experiencing, which is making adoption challenging. Something, be it certain plays, maybe the product, maybe how you're communicating with your customers, is not driving adoption effectively and seamlessly. And this signal should be evaluated to improve the customer experience and progression of the customer funnel for the entire customer base. And so again, this notion of continually observing your customers and their desire path not only allows you to keep evolving with them, but that closed loop feedback allows you to keep learning from the patterns of your most successful customers. It allows you to proactively get to customers way early before they become at risk to help them get back on track. And it helps you to identify how you can operationally continually improve and make that desire path even more seamless for your customers. And so once a company has implemented that intelligent framework and proactively monitoring customer progress along the journey, to continually identify and improve this evolving customer desire, it can actually measure how effective it is at driving its own revenue. And so this is where the desired path velocity metric is critical. Desired path velocity measures the speed at which customers, in other words, revenue, because that customers equal revenue, are progressing through the customer journey. So it measures the speed at how customers or revenue are progressing through the customer journey. And it's a measure of how effective an organization is at retaining and expanding revenue. So the better a company is at driving loyalty and repeatable success for its customers, the more successful its business is. And a higher desired path velocity means a company is keeping more customers, selling them more, and or driving customer outcomes faster and with less effort. And tracking that desired path velocity over time indicates how aligned a company is to its customer desired path, which is the most effective way to drive customer loyalty and expansion. And the customer funnel ties the customer feedback loop into the organization. It acts as a means to track customers against a yardstick that for the first time post-sales, and we're really proud of this at Desired Path to be bringing this to the industry as industry first metrics, to allow companies to, for the first time, have a leading indicator of unhealthy or healthy progress. And the desired path velocity measures how effectively that company is retaining and growing the revenue. And together, they can help companies mitigate churn risk and stay ahead of disruption signals by using customer feedback to adapt to and anticipate those ever-changing needs of the customers, the challenges that we talked about earlier on in the presentation. And so this is the key to protecting the revenue that companies work so hard to earn in the first place. The intelligent framework works. In working with over 30 clients, we've found that those employing the intelligent framework on average see these types of results. When you know how to prescriptively and proactively manage customers through a journey, you're able to accelerate the adoption because you can be very focused on what needs to be done and work with them and manage them accordingly. It increases retention because, as we know, a quicker accelerated path to adoption is really key in retention. There's an effective realized capacity gain when resources are providing relevant information at the right time, and we're codifying what's working, and we're also automating things like repeatable product how-tos, and we're enabling teams to spend more time as strategic partners. You're moving the effort to what is really accretive to moving a customer forward. And these things all translate into increased revenue. And again, when you've got a proactive approach, when you can identify risk a lot earlier than customer health scores, you can actually start to reduce escalations because you're getting them back on track before the escalations even happen. Customers have also, on average, doubled their revenue, and they've increased customer sat. It also helps clients be more proactive and disciplined. We're bringing in a much more repeatable and disciplined approach to the post-sales organization that the sales organization has done for years now. And I want to be very respectful and of the post-sales organization. Let's face it, it's really hard to operationalize the value propositions that we promise to our customers. It's easier to say and sell the value prop than it is to then get it realized at their organization. You as a vendor have your own company culture, your customers have their own company cultures. There's all sorts of factors. It just becomes much more complex. But with an intelligent framework, we can start to see how we can be much more repeatable and focused in what's driving success, and it allows for a much more disciplined approach that is measurable. And in the past, we've been really reactive because we can't help but wait for customers to ask us questions if we're not proactively managing them. And so this is really key as well to turning customers into bigger customers. So companies who deliver on increasing expectations and organize their business around their customers keep the revenue they work so hard to earn. This changing landscape of business has created an environment where only customer-centric organizations will survive. Your customer's journey is the desired path to success. The intelligent framework helps you achieve smarter, faster revenue growth by continuously aligning your operations to the patterns of your most successful customers, and allows you to keep evolving to meet their needs and these ever-increasing expectations. And then with the framework and industry-first metrics, revenue management is extended for the first time across the entire customer lifecycle to help you measure your progress to revenue growth. So how close is your organization to its customers' desired path? If you're interested in learning more about the intelligent framework, I urge you to check out our website at thedesiredpath.com. You can also request a copy of the ebook of how to keep the revenue your company works so hard to earn off of our website, or send me an email at get@thedesiredpath.com. We're happy to talk further. In the meantime, I think we've got some time to answer any questions that may have popped up. Corey?
Great. Thank you for that presentation, Kia. So yes, I'd like to invite the audience to please go ahead and submit your questions in the webinar console right now. And let's see, we've had a question come in, and it's around your formula. So the question is customer service cost simply a measurement of time times salary of humans involved in customer success and customer support interactions, or is more involved?
That's a great question. So start simple. First, what I would do is urge companies to do a cost-based accounting of what the effort that they outlined in their playbooks that aligns to their customer desire path, what that effort is. And now you've got what the effort should be to get customers across the desired path. And then you can start to measure whether the effort to get the customers to their desired path if customers on average need more effort than that, or less effort on that, or on par. And this is where you start to see truly whether the plays you've identified and the effort that you've aligned to the desired path, if it is enough or too much, and you can start to adjust accordingly depending. So measure what you've outlined in the plays, start to measure and monitor that with the effort against all your customer base by measuring that desired path indice and the customer service cost, and then you'll be able to start to see what on average is the real effort that is required to get customers through that desired path.
Awesome. Let's see, we had another question that came in that says, how does the payback period play into this? Does reaching profitability on a particular customer acquisition change the approach at all?
Can you repeat that question again?
Yes. The question is, how does payback period play into this? Does reaching profitability on a particular customer acquisition change the approach at all?
I guess I'm not sure if I understand exactly the context of that question, but let me answer in the best way that I know in terms of understanding what the question is. So does the payback period, et cetera, play into the equation or not? No, right now what I find is that we are not post-sales measuring customer progress at all. And so right now it's about instituting the model that allows you to measure this and see how aligned your efforts are to that desired path. You certainly want to see, are you starting to, you certainly want to have other KPIs. This is not in isolation or in replacement of other KPIs. So you certainly want to measure time to adoption. You want to see a time to value. Those are all key metrics that should still be used in conjunction, and then give you a bigger picture and also inform what you're doing. So if you start to measure effort, and let's say you need to do more work or less work to get customers to their desired path, but you might find that you are slowing adoption down, you might want to start to analyze that. Maybe slowing down adoption at the beginning might ultimately result in better revenue expansion later on, because the customers, maybe you're slowing down to what they need to get to their maturity to allow them to adopt the usage properly, and maybe you were going too fast before. So maybe, you know, increasing that adoption time was actually a good thing. I don't know. This is where you have to start to look at everything in a holistic manner at a bigger scale. But I mean, happy to, if whoever asked that question, if you want to send me email, happy to chat with you further on that for your specific situation.
Awesome, thank you. We have another question that has come in that is, how would you recommend setting those metrics to be the best representation of the situation of the customer along their journey for the first time, and how to iterate and improve on those?
The answer there would be to, if I've understood it correctly, is to literally map out what that customer desire path is from your customer's perspective. What is it? What does the journey look like for them? Not just to learn how to use your product and learn how to, you know, turn the dials and press the buttons, etc. But really, what does it take for them to understand how to leverage it within their environment so that they're getting business value? Understand what that journey looks like. Understand then what those activities look like to support that. And then the beauty of an intelligent framework is that you can now start to validate it, either going to some customers and asking if that journey looks, you know, does that resonate with them? Is that truly their journey? But you can also start to use it in operations and start to validate it, because you've got this feedback and you're measuring customers going through, you're measuring your work effort. You can then start to see where there are just discrepancy based on the model, and that is the feedback that then helps you continue to look at areas within the journey that you might have had misconceptions about. It'll allow you to validate things, but it'll also allow you to change things that you might have been misthinking previously. So I hope I answered that question correctly, if I understood it.
Awesome. We have another question, and that is, what can a business that doesn't really understand its customers yet, maybe a startup that doesn't have a lot of data or customers yet to analyze, how do they get started, and would this framework still be valid?
Yeah, that's great. Absolutely, it's still valid. And just to my last point, where in an intelligent framework that is learning, it's holistic and it's intelligent and it's results driven. What that means is, if you are a startup and you might be still in the product fit phase, and I would encourage you to define what you believe the hypothesis is for your customer journey. You obviously started out the company and developed a product to fit a market need. And presumably you've got some sort of expertise within that market need. So you might be very familiar with that. You might have been in that situation yourself. And so so map out that journey of what you think it is, map out that playbook that you think that should support that journey, and then start to work with your with any sort of test beta customers, do some market research out there to validate, because now you have something on paper that you can actually validate. It's better to have something completely wrong that you can validate than have nothing down at all and then try to figure out, okay, how do I support customers? So the model works at all sizes, and it probably will get you to a faster place that you need to be with customer success by putting that learning muscle organizational muscle to be customer centric and continually observing the customers. Sorry.
Awesome. I think that makes a lot of sense. Another question we have is, what are some common mistakes that companies make in trying to keep their customer revenue? And I guess I'll give you a moment.
Sorry. I'm so
No.
sorry. So what are common mistakes customers make in trying to keep revenue?
Yeah.
I talk about random acts of customer success often. I'm just going to take just a little bit more water. I find that too often we with all the best intentions go out there and look for all the best practices. So we now, as customer success continues to mature as a discipline and becomes a little bit more repeatable, we're borrowing all these notions of a quarterly business review or a success review or a value review, and we're doing a 120-day renewal plans, or we're doing customer success plans. But if we're just taking all these things and then inserting them into our organization and then doing them at customers without understanding their customer desire path and the context of what their journey is like, we're doing customer success at them and not for them. And they don't become best practices then when we do them without the context of the customer in mind. And so I think some of the biggest mistakes I see is when companies truly don't understand their customers and why they purchase the products to leverage what they want to do to achieve their own business outcomes, and what are those desired outcomes, and what's the value they're looking for, and what is that organization, how do those customers internalize the change that your products or services could potentially be bringing into their organization. How all of these things drive successful adoption and usage and expansion. So understanding the customers and not just taking best practices in isolation and doing them, these random acts of customer success at your customer, but tying them up holistically by understanding that desire path and then aligning them allows you to start doing things for customers, and that makes a huge difference in revenue.
Great. At this time, it doesn't look like we have any other questions coming in, so I think we'll go ahead and wrap up the webinar. But before I do, I wanted to remind everyone that we will be sending out a recording of this webinar tomorrow. And at the end of this webinar, you'll see a survey popped up, and we'd appreciate if you could take a minute before logging off just to complete the survey and provide your feedback. So thanks again for joining us, and have a great rest of your day, and thank you, Kia.
Thank you very much.